Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 131. And actually there were two games in this video, so let's go over the first one real quick. I'm leaving the chess engine off for this video because there are some tactical quizzes I wanted to give you, so I'll report on the findings as they occur. So in the first game, my opponent was white, e4, I played d5. And let's see. Yeah, I haven't figured out why it does that. Sometimes, I mean, it created a new variation which is identical to the one I was trying to play. Anyway, let's look at this in the opening book. Takes is a normal move, and then you can take back with the queen right away, or you can play knight f6, which is the way I play it, with the idea of grabbing it on the next move. And if he plays c4 here, you can see that is one of the moves. You can play c6 or e6 and go into a gambit, which is good for black. d4 is a normal move, and that's what I would play as white in this position, but it looks like knight c3 is the second most popular choice. I take the pawn, and then here's the first sort of opening mistake, is he takes the knight, and that just helps me develop a piece. The best move here is bishop c4, just putting more pressure and getting another piece out. So develop your pieces with threats. That's the way to keep your edge and your advantage when you're white in the opening. But instead I take back, and then now he makes this horrible mistake, b3. So here's your quick little tactical quiz if you didn't see the game. What's white to move black to move and win the game? What does he play? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. It's queen here, check. And that just wins a rook. There's no way to defend the rook and defend against the check at the same time. So the game went like this, and then my opponent resigned. So short game, I just want to back up to this position, which is here when my opponent played b3. I spotted this tactic almost immediately, and the reason is whenever your opponent plays a move like b3 or g3, you always look for tactics along the diagonal, because these diagonals have been weakened by that move, and there's often a rook still sitting here. And if these are played early in the game, there's not enough pieces around to defend that diagonal. So even sometimes just putting a bishop on this diagonal will be enough to win material or force some kind of concession, like a rook move or a pawn move that your opponent doesn't want to make. So immediately, whenever you see this move, g3 or b3 early in the game, or b6 or g6 on the other side, just look for tactics on that newly opened diagonal. And you'll be surprised, they pop up quite a bit. Okay, so let's go back to the main event. e4, e5. In this game, I was white. I kicked off with e4, my opponent played e5, and we get into a Ruy Lopez. So we can look at this in the opening book. Playing all the normal moves up until here when he played knight ge7. This is the Cozio defense, something like that. It's a bit unusual these days, and not considered the best. It doesn't put pressure on the e-pawn, so it gives white pretty much a free hand. I went ahead and castled here, which I guess is a move, and he played d6. I think with the Cozio, it's more logical to play the move g6. You basically are blocking in your dark squared bishop, and you need to develop an avenue for that bishop to develop, either to g7 or maybe even h6, depending on the circumstances. But my opponent played d6 instead, and I could play d4 immediately or c3, which I played, and now bishop d7, d4, and now he plays a6, and we're pretty much out of the book. So just look at the notation tab, and I did check this with the chess engine. At this point, because of the knight ge7 move and then the a6 move, it thinks that white has a significant advantage at this point, larger than the usual opening advantage, about half a pawn. And so I keep that, and the game continues in a logical fashion up until, let's see, d5. Yeah, right here. d5 is just a mistake. It loses the e-pawn. It's important to remember, you may get used, if you're playing a position, a game, opening like the Ruy Lopez, there's always this tension against the e-pawn. And sometimes you just get used to it. That tension is just there constantly, and you get tired of calculating it each time. But you really do. Every move you have to make sure, is that pawn still adequately supported? And yeah, d5 just leaves it unsupported, and I can grab it, which I do. So he plays bishop g4, an interesting move, putting pressure, and maybe if he could get his knight to e5 there, that would be good for me, and good for black, I mean. So I defend e5, so he can't play that. He takes here, I take here, and then he exchanges queens. This is a mistake. If he's down in pawns, he doesn't really want to get rid of material. And similarly with this rook move, this just makes it easier for me to maintain my advantage. It leaves fewer opportunities for black to develop a counterplay when there's less material on the board. But it's just a pawn, and the game goes on. It's not like a pawn will win you the game. Although between the pawn and my better development, safer king, the engine rates this as about a 1.5 point advantage, which is probably a winning advantage. And I keep that advantage. Let's see, he plays knight e6. I keep this advantage for quite a while, hitting my bishop. I go to bishop g3, he plays g6, h3. That was a mistake. I play h3, and asking his bishop where he's going, and he doesn't have too many good choices. If he went here, I probably would trade it off as well, but he decided to trade it for a knight. Probably a reasonable choice. Bishop g7 and rook d1, castles. And right here, I make a mistake. I play the move knight d4. And this isn't a losing mistake, but black has a good move here, which he did not play in the game. So anyway, this is a good opportunity for you to evaluate the position and see what you would play as black. It is a bit tactical in nature, but it's also just a logical developing move. So yeah, see if you can figure out what the move is and why it's so good. I am going to give the answer away now, so pause the video if you want time to think about it. The answer is rook to d8. And you know, like I said, it's a logical developing move. You put your rook on an open file. It wasn't doing a whole lot. On f8, this f-pawn did not need defending. It wasn't under attack. And it creates a pin. So it actually comes with an immediate threat of c5. And that's something that needs to be respected. So I could just move my rook out of the way. But if I do that, I'll lose a pawn, because knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes. So, but holding on to the pawn turns out to be very difficult. For example, rook d2 was the first thought that occurred to me. Black has the move, bishop to h6, hitting the rook and saying, well, do you really want to stay there? And now if I try to block the bishop with f4, the knight can take. He's got two pieces on the f pawn. So, and I only have one defender, so I would lose a pawn that way. My idea was, of course, if he plays, instead of bishop h6, if he were to play c5, I can play my knight here or here and defend my rook. So that's a nice way to unpin when that works. But he can immediately harass my rook. So after bishop h6, going back here allows the pin again, so I go here, and then the knight comes in here, hitting my rook and hitting my bishop, and I can't even go here to defend the bishop, which is hanging. So this is bad for me. And let's see, the chess engine recommends after rook d8, rook to d3 is the best way. There's another way to unpin, is to move your rook to a square where it's defended. And now in this case, he can play the knight to here first. Gives me time for this move, and then he can play bishop to h6. I play here, and then he takes the bishop. And now, so he's eliminated the bishop pair. I still have an advantage of one pawn, but black's pieces are much more active, and my pieces are somewhat awkwardly placed. So my advantage has shrunk from a pawn and a half down to half a pawn or less. And you know, so black has realistic prospects to draw the game at least. So I would have turned the tables from what was an easily winning position. So this move knight d4, allowing that pin, was just a mistake on my part. Fortunately for me, my opponent missed that. He played knight to g5, and I go bishop Bishop b7. Yeah, okay, I decided he's hitting my bishop and I had to go somewhere with it. And I decided to go after his weak pawns on the queen side. They're a bit scattered here, try and increase my advantage. He plays f6, which is a mistake because it just opens up a line to his king, and you don't want to do that unless there's some material reason for it. Although it does get his rook to a good square, defending the a-pawn. So I play knight b3, planning to reroute my knight to c5, hitting a6 again. He plays knight to f5, going after this bishop. And I decided I don't want to trade my good bishop for a knight, so I go here, and he moves here. And now I just went ahead and took on g7, because that was my plan. And I figured after I take on g7, he can take back either one of the bishops, but he can't take both. So whichever bishop he takes, I can save the other one. But I have a better move here, so this is another tactical quiz for you. What's the best move for white in this position? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. This is a very common tactical theme. When one of your pieces is under attack, it's often a good idea to move it away from the attack, and it's especially a good idea if you can move it with check. So bishop to d5 check forces his king to move. I think it doesn't matter a whole lot whether it goes to f8 or h8. And then you can grab another pawn. You don't have to take the bishop over here. This c7 pawn was just hanging. And it hits the rook. And not only that, the rook has very few squares. You see, these are all covered by the bishops. It's, notice what a good job a pair of bishops can do in harassing a rook. So the rook only has one square to go to. And in this position, the computer rates this as strongly in white's favor. So in addition to having a two-pawn advantage, you have the bishop pair, and all your pieces are out, and black's pieces are very awkwardly placed. So if you don't believe it, this is an interesting position to set up with white and black and see how the game would continue. But although the material balance is just +2 or maybe 2.5 counting the bishop pair, the chess engine rates this as +5 for white. So it thinks it's a really strong advantage for white. Okay, so I missed that idea. I just took the bishop. Now this retains a winning advantage, but it just makes the game last a lot longer. So I'm continuing my idea of going after the pawns over here. He trades rooks, probably not a good choice, and I managed to grab a second pawn. So I'm 2 pawns up now. And just need to regroup my pieces. And rather than take the pawn immediately, it's better to give a check, chase the king away, and then take the pawn. Even here, I don't have to take immediately because he could take back with a knight, and that's a good square for his knight. So I play g4. So I thought, well, this is a kind of an instructive sequence. So he played d4, probably thinking to trade immediately and get his knight to a good square. So with a pair of moves, first this. These moves are called intermezzos when you play an in-between move rather than immediately retaking something. These moves come with tempo. It's a threat against the king. He has to move. And this move g4 is a threat against the knight. That has to move. And then you can recapture the pawn. So that's a very common tactical motif that you should know. Although as I was playing that, I had completely forgotten about the h3 pawn here, which he takes. So I managed to win a pawn, but he gets a pawn over here too. Okay, so I get my king away from checks and stuff, and just start moving my pawn slowly forward. And this was a clear mistake, although it's a little difficult to see how he's ever going to develop this knight anywhere. For example, this is the only safe square it has, and then from there it can only go back to where it came, basically, because all these other squares are covered. So maybe, and he can't go to that square is out. So he moved it here. But this just makes my job easier because I win another pawn. And he does get his king forward. No, he can't get his king forward. I'm sorry. Yeah, the bishop and the pawn are covering all of these squares, so his king is cut off. He moved his king sideways, and I started pushing on the queen side. Here, rather than moving his king was not any threat. It might have been a better idea just to play b4 and try and clamp down on these pawns. Now I really can't move these guys. If I move the a pawn, he can take en passant, and his pawn is queening quicker than mine is. So one pawn can hold back 2 pawns, which is a useful endgame trick. But I still have 3-1 over here, so I'm still winning. Anyway, king e6 allows me to play a4, and now I start running with the a pawn. And then he comes over here, which sort of stops my plan, because if I go a7, he takes the bishop, and then he can take the pawn. So I'm temporarily held up, and I have to start moving the other pawns forward. Now he can't take this because I will queen the a pawn. So he moves to b8, probably the only square, and then I start marching the other pawns forward. And here he plays check, and I move my king where he won't check me again. And of course, if he takes the bishop, I'll take back. The king can win a pawn, but these passed pawns over here will easily win for white. So he chooses to grab a pawn down here. And now, what's the best move for white? Here's your last tactical quiz. Okay, there's actually 2 moves that the chess engine rates as being equally good, and they're not the move I played. Neither of them are the move I played. The first one I thought of upon a second look at this position is, well, I could go ahead and play d7 now. He can't really stop me from queening one of these pawns now. If the king comes over here, I queen the a pawn, and if the knight comes back, I queen the d pawn. So you can't stop those from queening. So that would be the simplest way to win here. The chess engine also says that f5 is equally as strong. It's further away from the king. It has further to go to queen, but it's also further away from the king. So I guess it's equally unstoppable. Instead, I played king to c4, gave him one more knight move, and then I realized after grabbing here that I can just move my pawn forward and he can't stop it. And the knight is out of position, can't cover the d8 square, so only the king can cover that, and then I can push the a pawn and win with the extra queen. So anyway, I thought that was an instructive game. Hope you guys enjoyed that one, and leave any comments you have in the section below, and see you again soon. Bye.